The sky turned red. That was the first sign. Not sunset red, something else. It looked like blood had spilled across the heavens, thick and angry. Emmanuel slammed the brakes. The old Toyota jerked to a stop. Amara stirred in the backseat, her weak voice asking, "What's happening?" He didn't answer. He stepped out, barefoot, clutching his Bible. The streets of Cape Town were quiet. Too quiet. Then, from behind the clouds, a sound came, low, humming, mechanical, almost like a growl. Drones. Hundreds of them. Black, buzzing, swarming like flies toward one place. The church. Emmanuel looked back at Amara. "Stay down," he whispered. And he ran. He didn't have a weapon. Just the word, oil, and faith. But he knew something was waiting. As he approached the old church, flames erupted from its doors. But not ordinary fire. Blue, cold, unnatural. The statue of Zeno at the plaza had cracked. Now this. Inside the church, standing in the center of the fire, was Zara. Her eyes glowed like computer screens. Her fingers danced in the air, summoning holograms. "Welcome, Prophet," she said. "We've been expecting you." Emmanuel didn't flinch. He stepped into the fire. Zara's laughter echoed like a ringtone in hell. "You're brave. Or stupid. Which is it, Emmanuel?" "I'm chosen," he said. "That's all that matters." She circled him, bare feet gliding above the burning floor. "Chosen? Please. Look around. The world has moved on. God is outdated. Zeno is now." Emmanuel opened his Bible. "Yet your flames can't burn me." Zara paused. That's when she noticed it. The ash around his feet was forming symbols. Ancient ones. Symbols of deliverance. Her smile cracked. "You're not just a preacher, are you?" "I'm a door," he said. "And doors open. Or close." She lunged at him, fingers stretched like claws. Emmanuel didn't move. He just said one word, "Peace." And she froze. The fire died instantly. The drones outside dropped like stones from the sky. Zara's body began to glitch, like bad Wi-Fi. "You can't stop us," she stuttered. "I'm not here to stop you," Emmanuel said calmly. "I'm here to free her." Suddenly, behind him, the wall cracked, and Amara stepped in. No longer weak. No longer afraid. Her eyes held light. "Let's end this," she said. And the true war began. The air inside the car turned cold. Emmanuel gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles pale. Amara, in the backseat, began to murmur scriptures in a weak voice. Outside, the road stretched endlessly, empty, too empty. A billboard flickered in the distance. Zeno's face appeared on it, eyes glowing red. "You can't run from destiny, Prophet." Suddenly, the engine sputtered. Emmanuel hit the brakes. The car came to a stop beside an abandoned fuel station. He looked under the hood. Everything seemed fine, yet the car refused to start. That's when he noticed them. Figures in black, walking out of the bushes. Not running, just walking, like they had all the time in the world. Their faces were hidden, but their eyes glowed the same way Zeno's did. "Get back in the car," Emmanuel shouted. Amara sat up. "We're surrounded." He didn't wait. He pulled out the ram's horn and blew it again. A burst of light exploded from the horn's mouth, knocking the figures back into the bush like dry leaves in Harmattan. Amara gasped. Emmanuel's face was calm, but his eyes, they burned with something new, something divine. They abandoned the car and took to the forest trail behind the fuel station. Emmanuel led the way, Bible in one hand, the horn strapped across his back. Amara followed, barefoot, trembling but alive. The deeper they went, the more unnatural the forest became. Trees twisted like dancers in pain. The sky had no stars, just a dull red hue that pulsed like a wounded heart. "There's a church ahead," Emmanuel whispered. "An old one, not touched by their darkness yet." They reached it after an hour. A small wooden structure with a broken bell and stained glass. It looked fragile, but as soon as they stepped inside, the air changed. Warm, peaceful, like stepping into memory. They lit a candle. Emmanuel knelt and prayed silently. Amara stood beside a faded portrait of Jesus. Tears filled her eyes. "I don't want to be a slave anymore," she said. "Not to money. Not to them." Suddenly, a loud crack split the silence. The door flew open. A man stood there, tall, with dreadlocks and a white staff. "I am Jonah," he said, "the last of the Watchers, and I've been waiting for you." Jonah stepped inside, his sandals barely making a sound on the old wooden floor. His white staff pulsed with a soft blue light, and his presence felt like a calm storm, quiet but dangerous. Emmanuel stood, cautious but curious. "You said you're a Watcher?" Jonah nodded. "Before Zeno rose to power, there were 12 of us, sent to guard the line between flesh and spirit. Now I am the last." Amara leaned against a pew, eyes wide. "Then help us." "I will," Jonah said. "But you must understand. Zeno is not just a man. He is a network, a system of thoughts, wires, and worship. He feeds on fear, on doubt, and on silence. And you," he turned to Amara, "you once gave him everything." Amara's lips quivered. "But I turned back. I believe now. That's why you're still alive." A deep boom echoed through the forest. The windows shook. Jonah gripped his staff. "They've found us." He threw back his cloak, revealing markings carved into his skin, ancient, glowing symbols. "We make our stand here. If the sanctuary falls, there will be nowhere left to hide." Emmanuel looked at Amara, then at the cracked portrait on the wall. "Then we don't let it fall." The attack began at midnight. Shadows moved like liquid across the forest floor, crawling up the walls of the church. The door trembled under unseen pressure. Jonah stood at the entrance, staff raised, chanting in a tongue that sounded both old and holy. Emmanuel took Amara's hand and led her to the altar. "Stay behind me," he whispered. The door exploded inward. Not with fire, but with whispers, voices crawling into their ears, familiar and accusing. "You failed. You sinned. You're too late." Amara screamed and covered her ears. Emmanuel shouted, "Blind their tongues, Lord." And suddenly, silence. The shadows hesitated. Jonah slammed his staff to the floor. A wave of light rushed out, sweeping over the intruders. For a moment, they shrieked in pain, then turned into ash. But one figure stepped through the dust. Tall, female, mirror bodysuit. It was Rima, the tech goddess. "I came for her," she said, pointing to Amara. "And I won't leave alone." Emmanuel stepped forward. "You'll leave with nothing but smoke." Rima laughed, cruel and cold. "Then let the next plague begin." The candles went out. Darkness fell again. The church walls groaned like they were alive. Rima's laughter echoed through the darkness, but Jonah wasn't shaken. He lifted his staff, and a soft flame returned to the altar candle. Amara was trembling now. Her voice was barely a whisper. "She's not human anymore." "No," Jonah said. "I's never leaving Rima. She's a signal trapped in skin." Suddenly, Rima raised both arms. A swarm of drones burst through the church roof, blinking red and buzzing like angry insects. They circled the rafters, scanning the room. Emmanuel reached for his Bible and slammed it shut with force. "In the name of Jesus." Before he could finish, Rima snapped her fingers. The drones shot towards him like arrows. But Jonah moved first. With one word, Ezel. He struck the floor with his staff, and time slowed. The drones froze midair, locked in a shimmering field of light. Amara gasped. "What did you do?" "Borrowed seconds," Jonah said, breathing heavily. "We have only moments. Run." Emmanuel grabbed Amara's hand, and the three bolted through the rear door, out into the open night. Behind them, the church began to crumble, drones shaking off the light trap. Rima stepped through the rubble, smiling. "They can run," she whispered, "but there's nowhere left to hide." The night air was thick with smoke and sirens. Lagos was no longer itself. It pulsed with a strange energy, like the city was holding its breath. The trio ran through narrow alleys, Emmanuel leading, Jonah limping, Amara coughing from exhaustion. In the sky, massive screens flickered with Zeno's face. His voice echoed from hidden speakers. The chosen has awakened. The prophet still breathes. This is your final warning. Return to the system, or be deleted. Amara's knees buckled. We can't keep running, she gasped. We're not, Emmanuel said, pointing ahead. A rusted door beneath a bridge opened as they approached. Inside was a hidden sanctuary, stone walls, dim oil lamps, and symbols carved by those who resisted Zeno in silence. Waiting there was a woman, old, blind, but fierce. She tilted her head. You brought the girl, and the boy with time. I am not a boy, Jonah hissed. The woman ignored him. My name is Mama Oloye. I've been waiting for this night for 15 years. She turned to Amara, then Emmanuel. The chains are broken, but the debts remain. To fight Zeno, you must enter the labyrinth. That is where truth hides. Emmanuel's eyes narrowed. And what hides with it? The woman's lips curled. Your test. The labyrinth was not a place. It was a realm. Mama Oloye led them to a chamber beneath the sanctuary. A stone slab rested in the center, inscribed with ancient verses. She placed her palm on it, whispered a word in a forgotten tongue, and the ground trembled. The stone cracked open, revealing a glowing spiral staircase that led downward into darkness. No weapons, Mama Oloye said. No phones, no light, only your truth will guide you. Emmanuel nodded first. Amara followed. Jonah hesitated, then clenched his jaw and stepped in. The descent twisted time. One moment, they were walking side by side. The next, they were alone. Emmanuel found himself in a church, his old church, except the pews were filled with shadows. His past sermons echoed from invisible mouths, accusing him. Where were you when they needed you? Where was your faith when the world burned? He gritted his teeth, whispered, I never left. I just lost my voice. The shadows froze. Then they vanished. Meanwhile, Amara was back in the chamber of debts. But this time, it was empty. The chains were gone, but a single mirror stood in the center. She looked into it. It was not her reflection. It was Rima's. And she was smiling. Jonah stood in the labyrinth, but it looked like his childhood compound in Ibadan. The mango tree, the dusty path, the rusty gate. Everything was the same, except one thing. His father. The man stood at the entrance, holding a belt in one hand and a Bible in the other. You brought shame, the figure growled. You opened yourself to spirits. You were weak. Jonah's knees buckled, but he didn't fall. I survived you, he said calmly. I survived your silence. And now I choose who I become. The figure roared, bursting into black smoke. The labyrinth accepted his truth. Meanwhile, Amara stepped closer to the mirror. Rima's reflection leaned forward, eyes glowing. You're not free, Rima said. You were never free. You're just walking through borrowed light. I am chosen, Amara whispered. You're still marked, Rima replied. And marks don't wash off with prayer. The mirror shattered. Glass flew around her but didn't cut her skin. Instead, the fragments hovered, forming symbols midair, symbols only Emmanuel could read. In his part of the labyrinth, the ground lit up. The symbols burned themselves into his vision. They are summoning us, he muttered. Suddenly, the staircase vanished. The three of them fell, through time, through space, through purpose, and landed in Zeno's lair. Not a dream, not a test. It was real, and he was waiting. Zeno sat on a black marble throne, surrounded by fire and shadows that pulsed like living things. Behind him, the other siblings of darkness stood silently. Rima, Zara, Koza, and Maya, all dressed in garments that shimmered like oil on water. They didn't blink. They didn't breathe. Emmanuel, Amara, and Jonah rose slowly from the cold floor. "So," Zeno said, his voice smooth again, dripping with calm danger. "The prophet. The repented. The broken son." Jonah clenched his fists. "We came to end this." Zeno chuckled. "You came to die." He raised his hand, and lightning struck the floor between them, forming a glowing circle. The walls of the lair shifted like waves. This place was alive, reacting to Zeno's will. "I want a fair game," Zeno smirked. "One chance. One test. If you pass, I'll let the girl go. If you fail, the world burns." "Why us?" Amara asked, trembling but standing tall. "Because," Zeno said, rising from his throne, "the world no longer fears God, but they'll fear what comes next." The siblings stepped forward. Each held an ancient relic. Each symbolized a part of the old world: power, control, greed, deception. Emmanuel gripped his Bible tighter. And then the floor vanished again. This was the real trial. The final descent. Shadows followed. They landed hard in a circular chamber made entirely of reflective glass. There were no doors, no windows, only their own reflections staring back at them. Twisted, angry, accusing. Zeno's voice echoed from above. "Face yourselves, before you face us." Jonah stepped forward first, staring at a version of himself holding a knife, soaked in blood. His breath caught in his throat. "No, that was years ago." The reflection spoke. "But it's still who you are." Jonah punched the mirror. It didn't break. Amara's reflection showed her chained, her eyes darkened, her womb hollowed by debt. She backed away, whispering, "That's not me anymore." But the reflection only laughed. Emmanuel walked forward, calm and steady, his reflection showing him holding a burned Bible, eyes filled with doubt. For a second, he paused. Then, softly, he said, "I know who I am." The Bible in his hands glowed. A crack shot through the glass chamber. One by one, the reflections began to shatter, not by force, but by truth. As Emmanuel spoke words of light, each wall gave way, crumbling into dust. They didn't fight their reflections. They forgave them. And that was the key. Above, Zeno frowned. "They've passed the first gate." But his eyes burned hotter. "Let's see how they face the second." The shattered glass dissolved into mist, revealing a stone bridge hanging over nothingness. Beneath it, darkness, swirling and endless. Above, flashes of memories, sins, regrets, every failure laid bare like wounds. "This bridge is not for the proud," Amara whispered. Emmanuel went first, his steps slow, steady. Each time he moved forward, the bridge behind him vanished. "No turning back," he said. Jonah followed, trembling. The darkness below called his name. A familiar voice whispered, "You're still a thief. You'll always be." He closed his eyes, fought the lie with a single prayer, "I'm not who I was." Amara was last. The bridge shook under her feet. From the darkness below, the voices of the 7 music executives rose, chanting debts, curses, old songs that once bound her. She faltered. "Don't listen to them," Emmanuel called out. "Keep walking." "I'm tired," she said, tears in her voice. "You're not alone," he said. Suddenly, wind howled. From the end of the bridge, a figure stood, Rima. She wasn't smiling this time. Her mirrored bodysuit was cracked, her halo dim. "Stop here," she warned. "If you pass this point, the war will find everyone you've ever loved." Emmanuel met her eyes. "Then let it find us." Anne stepped forward. Thunder roared. The bridge shook violently as Rima raised her hand, summoning a surge of electric energy. Blue bolts danced across her cracked bodysuit like wild snakes. The sky above them tore open, revealing red clouds and machines flying like vultures. "You were warned," Rima growled, her voice no longer digital, but desperate. Jonah reached into his bag, pulled out the old wooden cross his grandmother gave him. He held it up, his hands shaking. "We didn't come to fight," he said. "We came to set her free." Rima laughed bitterly. There is no freedom without blood. Then she vanished. In her place, dozens of drones swarmed through the storm, shooting beams of red light that burned through stone. Emmanuel shielded Amara with his body, whispering, "Father," confused their systems. Suddenly, the drones glitched mid-air. Sparks flew. Some exploded. Others spiraled and crashed into the void below. Amara gasped, "How are you doing this?" "I'm not," Emmanuel said softly. "It's him." A blinding light cracked through the red sky, and a deep, ancient horn sounded from the distance. For the first time, Rima hesitated. Then a voice, calm, holy, and heavy, echoed across the bridge. The debt has been answered. The war was no longer just physical. It had become spiritual. The moment that voice echoed, the entire city seemed to pause. The skies, once red and violent, dimmed. Not with peace, but with anticipation. Like the calm before a storm too big for words. Zeno stood at the edge of his golden balcony, eyes fixed on the distance. His siblings, Rima, Zara, Koza, and Maya, stood behind him, shaken for the first time. "He's here," Zara whispered, fingers trembling over a floating screen. "Something ancient, something that doesn't answer to our codes." Koza tightened his grip on his blade. "Then we kill it. We've killed gods before." Zeno's face was unreadable. "No," he said, his voice as quiet as a whisper yet sharp as steel. "This is not a god. This is a reckoning." Down below, Emmanuel carried Amara into the heart of the abandoned cathedral. Its roof torn open, its pews broken, but the altar still standing. He placed her on the steps. "They will come for us here. But this time, we are not alone." Amara looked up at the cracked cross above the altar. Her voice trembled. "Why me?" Emmanuel met her eyes. "Because you believed, when you had every reason not to." Outside, lightning split the sky again. And in the silence that followed, footsteps approached. Not human, not machine, something in between. The church doors groaned open, not by human hand, but by force of presence. Cold air swept inside like an unseen tide, extinguishing the remaining candles. Emmanuel stood, arms outstretched, Bible clutched tightly. Amara trembled on the altar steps, watching shadows move where light had no business retreating. Then they entered, Zeno's siblings. Not all at once, but one after the other. Rima stepped first. Her mirrored bodysuit reflected every shattered part of the church, her hair still drifting like she was underwater. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her glare burned. Behind her, Koza entered, dragging a sword longer than most men. He scraped it against the marble floor, sparks flying with each step. Zara followed, her body flickering like a corrupted broadcast. And finally, Maya floated in, no footsteps, only scent, jasmine and danger. Zeno hadn't arrived. Yet. "You should have stayed hidden," Rima whispered, her voice like electricity humming in a dead wire. "I don't hide from darkness," Emmanuel replied. "Then you will drown in it," Koza said. Amara slowly rose behind him. Her face was pale, but her spirit stronger. "No, not again. Not me." The floor shook. From above, the cracked cross burst into flames. And from outside, Zeno's voice. "I warned you." The flames from the cross didn't spread. They floated, hovering like glowing witnesses over the chaos below. Amara gasped, shielding her face. Emmanuel didn't flinch. He tightened his grip on the Bible and stepped in front of her. Zeno appeared at the doorway. He didn't walk in. He glided, his black robe flowed without touch, his eyes pure darkness wrapped in a thin line of gold. Time slowed when he entered. Even the fire paused, like it feared him. His voice cut the silence. "You broke her chains, prophet, but now you've unsealed something worse." Behind him, the wind screamed. Rima knelt and bowed her head. So did Koza. So did Maya. Zara folded her arms and hissed but eventually bowed too. Zeno's eyes locked on Emmanuel. "You don't understand what you've done." "I don't need to," Emmanuel replied. I was sent to do it. Zeno laughed. A slow, cruel laugh. Then die with that purpose. He raised his hand, and the walls began to bleed. Yes, bleed. Red streams poured from the old bricks, forming symbols on the floor. The church groaned as if it had lungs. Emmanuel whispered one word, power. And the ground opened beneath Zeno's feet. Zeno didn't fall. He hovered above the gaping hole like gravity no longer mattered. Smoke and ash spiraled beneath him, but he remained untouched, arms spread like a demon welcoming his worshippers. His eyes, once gold-ringed, were now pure black. Emmanuel stood firm. His palms glowed faintly from the power he'd summoned. Amara clutched the hem of his coat, her eyes still adjusting to the battle between spirit and flesh. You can't kill what was never born, Zeno whispered, his voice now deeper, layered with something ancient. I'm not here to kill you, Emmanuel said calmly. I'm here to end your reign. Zeno smiled, until the symbols bleeding from the walls began to burn. Not just glow, burn. The fire traced the symbols and climbed upward, wrapping around Zeno's feet like ropes made of flame. What is this? Zeno roared. Rima looked up in panic. His drawing from the old covenant, one deeper than ours. No! Maya shouted, but her voice cracked. He's not supposed to know that name. Emmanuel raised the Bible. El-Gibber. The flames exploded. Zeno screamed, his voice echoing across the land. Crops withered. Birds dropped from the sky. Somewhere, children cried. But Amara smiled. Something inside her woke up. Amara stepped forward, barefoot on the cracked tiles, her once weak body pulsing with a quiet force. The fire had not touched her. The darkness had tried, but now, something else moved within her. Zeno writhed in midair, flames licking up his legs, but not consuming him. His scream echoed like a siren, drawing attention from far corners of the city. Above them, the sky churned. Red clouds swirled unnaturally, like blood in water. Maya staggered backward. She's not supposed to awaken. She was just a vessel. Rima, voice trembling, whispered, No, she's the gate. Emmanuel didn't flinch. He watched Amara, eyes glowing faintly with holy fire, as she raised her hand. With a voice no one expected from her, she said calmly, Let truth return. Suddenly, a sound split the air, not thunder, not an explosion, but a trumpet. A deep, ancient sound that rolled through every alley, every heart, every soul. People across Lagos froze. Those under Zeno's influence dropped to their knees, dazed, blinking. Zeno's siblings staggered, holding their heads. What is this? Koza growled. Emmanuel smiled. That's the sound of memory. The veil began to tear. People started remembering who they were before lies, before the harmony, before debt became a god. Zeno fell to his knees, roaring like a beast. His voice cracked the earth, split concrete, and shattered nearby windows. But it was no longer the voice of power. It was the voice of a dethroned prince. Amara stepped toward him slowly, the glow in her eyes now steady. Her skin, once pale and worn, pulsed with restored life. Each step she took was like a ripple, reality adjusting around her. The spirits of the 7 executives appeared above, screaming as their influence crumbled. You were never God, she said softly. Zeno looked up at her, eyes blood-red. You don't know what's coming. I was trying to protect the world from what's next. From the rubble, Emmanuel raised his Bible once more. Fear is not protection. Control is not peace. Then came the final twist. Maya, the youngest, the master of influence, suddenly stepped between Zeno and Amara. Her eyes were wet. He's right, she said. There's something darker, deeper, beneath all this. Something even we couldn't stop. Amara froze. What do you mean? Maya looked up, broken. We were running from it too. That's why Zeno turned to debt. It was never about power. Then, from beneath the ground, something moved. Something older than all of them. The real war hadn't even started.